Hey everybody, welcome back to our Character Creator to Unreal tutorial series, part 2. In the last tutorial, what we did is we basically created this wondrous character that you see in front of you right here, this Lara Croft looking character. And in this tutorial, we're going to be animating her. We're going to be creating an idle, a walking, and a running animation. So let's get started right away. What I want to do first is apply an idle animation to this character. And to do that, I'm going to be using basically a motion from one of our content packs. To apply that, I'm going to go over here to our animation tab, and I'm going to be using this Mix Moves female content pack. You can purchase this in the content store. It's just a nice place to start off my idle animation. We're going to customize it later on. I'm going to move all the way to the bottom where we have these stand motions. There's like over 200 motions in this pack or something. I'm going to apply stand 04 to my character. And you can see, yep, she applies this nice stand animation right there. And if we press F3, we can go into our timeline. And you can see it creates a motion clip in the motion track of our character. If you don't have your character selected in the timeline, you can go up here and make sure that object related track is selected. You can, whenever you click your character, that will appear on the timeline. Alright, so there's our animation right there. It's looking okay, I guess, but what we want to do is we want to fix this, and we want to add something onto it as well. So I'm going to take this clip, and I'm going to click and drag it over to the right hand side. We're going to modify that later on. Now, what I'm going to do first is kind of create my own idle animation at the beginning here. Now, to do that, I'm going to be using the Direct Puppet tool. So I'm going to go into my Motion tab over here in the Modify panel and use this Direct Puppet tool. Now, this is a tool that you can actually kind of use your mouse movements to animate different body parts in real time. For example, if I take my chest on my character and choose Primary Rotation, and I press Space to preview, I can make her do a funky dance like this. Headbanging or something like that. But that's not what we want to do in this case. We want to press record, and we want to have a bit more of a subtle motion, back and forth kind of motion. So what I'm going to do is press record, and then press space. And I'm going to slowly move my mouse over here, kind of like a idle motion, like that. And before I reach the second motion clip, I'm going to press space again to stop. And that creates a separate puppet clip in my timeline. And I'm going to go back to the beginning as well. And I'm going to do the same thing with her head. If I want her head to move around while I'm idling, I guess, you can do the same thing. Press record. I can have her look that way. Have her look over here. And then back to the middle like that. And press space. And that's going to have the overwrite the same motion clip. You can see there's a 0 in parentheses there. Now what we have is we have two separate motion clips which we want to combine together. Now there's an easy way to do this. You can just simply click and drag them together like this. And you can see that now we go from this motion over here, if I press space, to this motion. We can increase that transition area as well by clicking and dragging right there. And what that'll do is that'll create a nice smooth transition into that motion. So we basically kind of fixed everything except for the one fact that obviously her hands are kind of going through the holster and going through her hip there, which doesn't really make sense. So what I'm going to do to modify this, I'm going to actually combine these clips into a single clip right off the bat. And to do that, I'm going to click and drag in my Collect Clip Track right here. Click and drag, left click and drag, and then right click and add motion to library. And it's going to save it to my desktop. It might save to the default iClone directory for you. I'm just going to call this idle step 1. Okay, and we'll just work with that. Save it to our desktop right there. And that saves the motion as a single motion clip, which is pretty cool. What we're going to do now is actually delete these two motion clips. No, we're deleting everything we created, but we're going to reapply it. So let's go back to our desktop right here. You can see idle step 01, the iMotion file. We'll click and we'll drag it onto our character. There she is. And just apply that at frame 1. And now you can see we have idle step 01 as a single motion clip. Now what I want to do first is I actually want to kind of decrease the length of this idle because it's a little bit too long for me. So let's go ahead, take that idle, and make sure you have this speed toggled on for clip modification. And we'll click and drag it down to like something like 550 frames. I think that looks fine right there. So we have something like this, a little bit faster, and I think that will work fine for our purposes. Now, next item of business is making sure those arms aren't going through the hips. So let's use the Edit Motion Layer tool to fix that. So Edit Motion Layer tool, now this is for keyframe editing. And you can see all these bones pop up. I don't like to have the bones there, so I go up here to bone settings and just take the opacity down to 0. And it's a little bit easier to see what you're actually working with once the bones aren't there. So let's take our character's shoulders and let's try and see if we can do the mirror in this case. And let's bring those up like that. It's not really working. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That works fine right there. We'll just, use the mirror and take them up using that one blue Z-axis right there, and I think that looks fine. So our shoulders look a little bit better right there, and this arm is a little bit further out as well. This arm on the right, we'll take off mirror, needs to be rotated slightly, using the E hotkey there to move it out slightly like that. And that's going to be our starting idle motion. That's going to affect the entire rest of the clip. So let's go here and, do something like this. Now she's, idling, and when she puts her hand on her hip, now it's a little bit better, but she's kind of going through her little satchel there. So let's make sure we fix that as well. And to do that, let's focus in, let's zoom in a little bit on there. And I'm going to open up the motion layer track. And this is going to be for all our motion layer keyframes. We'll twirl it down here. You can see we have torso and head and everything like that. We're just going to be working with the dope sheet at the top here though. So let's just go ahead and double click in that track right there, and that'll create a keyframe. And then right here, where she's kind of going through the satchel, what we want to do is we want to kind of make sure that, she's not. So let's go ahead and zoom in right there a little bit on the timeline at this point right here. We'll take her wrist and kind of move that out, slide it to the side like that. I think that looks fine. And let's see what that works out to be. Alright, so we're good to go right here. And when she places her wrist on her hip, we need to make sure it's a little bit higher up as well. So we'll just make sure that maybe the arm can help a little bit as well. We'll bring that arm up, and then we need to make sure that we take that wrist back down. Not too far down. Something like that'll do. And again, you kind of get the point that we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sure she doesn't break through her satchel. And she's still breaking through it. I think we need to move this. Let's move the arm up at this frame here. There we go. That should work. So now she'll go like that, and it's still breaking through a little bit. No one's really going to notice in a video game. Again, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but there's our three keyframes where you kind of fix that motion right there. Now let's hold Alt and scroll down to zoom out of our timeline and move to the very end, and same thing happens over here. So again, let's just right here, double click, and at this point, frame right here where she's going through, let's make sure that we take that arm up again. I'm going to be just lazy and take the entire arm out like that. I think that's going to work okay. And then, okay, and then back to normal. And right here what we want to do, because we want this to be loopable. Now this is an essential part to remember. We want this to be loopable, so we want the position at the very first frame and the very last frame of this motion to be identical. Now to do that, what I can do is at the very first frame, right click on that keyframe and select copy. And at the very end, what I can do is paste it down here. So we'll just paste it so it's at the exact same position, and that works out fine and dandy for our purposes. Alright, so there's our idle motion taken care of. Let's zoom out, close down our edit motion layer tool, and play that back. So looks okay. Maybe a little bit fast on the move to her hip, but we're just going to work with that. All right, that looks fine for me. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is first of all load my character into 3D Exchange, because we're going to be exporting this in a couple tutorials from now. And I'm going to go over here to the Edit tab with my character selected, and we have an option here to edit in 3D Exchange. So I'm just going to select that, and my character is going to load up in 3D Exchange. Now, if you have any accessories with animation data, such as that pistol that I had earlier, it'll be removed, all the animation data, which is fine and dandy. And you can see now we have our character in 3D Exchange, and you can, take a look at the character from all different angles. Let's go ahead and apply that first animation though. So we're going to go Alt-Tab back over into iClone here, press F3 to go into our timeline, and we're going to use that same collect clip function that we had before. So we're going to just zoom in slightly on our timeline right here, and what I'm going to do is just click and drag in the collect clip track. Make sure it's from the very last frame there. So we'll click and drag all the way. We can extend this by just moving it over here. And make sure it's at the very first frame as well. And what I want to do now is right click and select Add Motion to 3D Exchange. What that's going to do is that's going to add that motion directly to 3D Exchange, and we'll get a preview of what our FBX export is going to look like. So here's our character, putting your hand on her hip right there, and at the very end, there's our loop right there. So again, her movements are a little bit fast to the hip and away from the hip. Maybe we moved it a little bit too fast, but that's okay. You get the general idea of what we're looking at. So there's our custom idle animation. So what that does is it appears in the motion library here under our animation section. So I'm going to select that motion and then select Add to Perform. And in the Perform editor, we need to name this. We'll name it Idle. Anything that you export in FBX or iAvatar or anything like that is only going to be exported if you add it to the Perform editor. So make sure you do that. Let's go back into iClone now then, and we can save this motion if we want. We don't really need to worry about it. It's already in our 3D Exchange. So let's just go ahead and frame one, right click, and select Remove Animation from our character. And let's do a quick walk. So let's go to our Motion tab up here. And for our walk, I'm going to apply another motion from our motion library. This one comes for free with iClone 6. It's under G6 Motion Heidi, under Move, and you can see we have this catwalk loop. So this is a nice looking catwalk right here. Again, you can see because our character seems to have fairly large hips. Her arms are going through the holster right there. So that's an easy fix, like I mentioned before. We need to do the same thing basically. Select our character, F3, and let's go into the timeline. And right here, before she kind of moves her arm forward through the holster, let's make sure we double click in the motion layer track to add us a keyframe, and the tool will pop up right away. And then right here, where she's kind of moving her arm through the holster, let's take the arm. We can actually take the shoulder as well and move the entire shoulder out, I think. Something like that will be fine. Nothing too extreme. Make sure it looks natural. Okay. And then again, here we can just press reset it back to the original data that was found in the clip. That's what happens whenever you press reset. It adds a keyframe and just resets it back to the original data in the clip. So I think, oh goodness, it doesn't look too good. Let's try and do that a little bit earlier maybe. There we go. Again, it's still going through the holster. So let's take this, take her arm a little bit further, something like that. Okay, so successfully around the holster, and here, again, we need to do the same thing, so she definitely cannot be going through her body like that, so we'll just bring it out again like that, and like that, and that works fine. Okay, so how about the left-hand side? Looks okay. It's still kind of going through the holster. Again, try and keep all your modifications on the same keyframes. I think that's okay. We'll just we'll bring it out a little bit on the left-hand side there as well, something like that. And again, that. Otherwise, it's going to go back to normal on the left-hand side of her body. I think that looks fine. And here it's going through her holster there again. So we'll just add a separate keyframe here, and with this keyframe, we're going to move that arm out like that, and around, and here it needs to be out further again. That, and I think that'll work fine. And there we go. All right, now again, like I mentioned, the first frame and the last frame need to be exactly the same. So right-click your keyframe in your motion layer track, and just paste that at the very end. So let's test this out. Okay, I think we're good. There's our walking motion completed. So we'll just quickly add this to 3D Exchange. We don't want to spend too much more time on that. Click and drag in the collect clip track, right click, and select Add Motion to 3D Exchange right here. Alright, and there is our walking motion. Again, we just modify the arm slightly. A little bit jerky on the right arm there, but again, you can refine and modify that later on. But I think we're looking pretty good for a walking animation. to start with anyways, and we'll just work with that. So let's go ahead and press stop. And motion 1 is the one that it added into the timeline, or added into the animation motion library there. We'll select add perform, add to perform, and we'll call this one walk. So that'll be our walking animation. And finally, we'll move on to our sprinting animation now. So we'll do the same thing again. I don't want to save this motion for now. I'm going to right click and remove animation on my character. And this time I'm going to apply a motion from the motion library. And it's going to be one from our adventure motion pack. So let's go over here to adventure movies. And under escape, we have this cool being chased 01. Now this one has a unique problem where it's actually a root motion. So our character actually physically moves forward in our world. So what I want to do is make sure she doesn't do that. And the easiest way that I find to do that is just go ahead and use a prop dummy. So I'm going to go to props here, just use like a 3D block prop. I'm going to arc, because that's the first folder, and just add an arc object to our scene right here. I'm going to scale that down slightly by pressing the R key and scaling down like this. And we'll move it by pressing W hotkey to the heel right there. And then basically, if I press F3 and go to the timeline with our character selected there, you can see she'll run all the way over here. And at this frame, all we need to do is just click and drag, move her heel back to the exact same position. So that prop just acts kind of as my reference, little reference prop there. So now she runs like this. It is no longer a root motion, and we've solved the problem. So it's pretty easy to do that. Now this run is a little bit of a strange run. It's kind of like an escape run. So there's one thing we want to do here, and that is modify her legs slightly. Because if you look from the front, her legs are kind of like spread out really wide. It looks really kind of strange like that, for example. So we'll do the same thing with our edit motion layer tool again, using keyframe editing. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, just with the character's arms, I want her arms to be a little bit rotated a little bit more like this. And I want her hands to be sort of clenched as well. So we can just click and drag the kind of the palm area right there and kind of, clench those slightly, which is a really fast way to do that. I'll take this arm right here and rotate it slightly as well and clench those hands right there. So then we have this. Everything looks okay. I think everything kind of looks pretty decent up until the last stride that she takes, where her legs kind of separate totally. So here we go. And I think it looks okay up to here. And then at this point, she kind of like, spreads her arm and her legs like that, which doesn't look really that cool. So I'm going to go right here, add a keyframe in my motion layer track again. And let's go ahead and rotate that arm slightly like this again. And I think this one looks fine at the back. And we're going to work from here. So let's go a couple frames forward. Right here is where she kind of really, her arm goes through her thigh first of all, so we need to fix that. So let's take this arm and move it out like that a little bit. Maybe not like that. Let's move the forearm out slightly. There we go. Okay. So we have two keyframes set up. This frame right here and this frame right here, which is where her left arm is also way too far out. So let's take that and kind of bring it back in like this and see what that looks like. Maybe still a little bit too far out, I think. I think at this point here, let's zoom in a little bit here. I want here, I think it looks okay, I guess. And then it's going to end like that. But at this end point, we need to obviously paste the first frame. But we'll take care of that later. Let's focus on her legs first. So here again, where her legs are so separated, you can see her feet are locked. There's a transform and a rotation lock. The TR stands for transform and rotation. Let's just take the thigh. And if we move the thigh inwards, the foot will remain stationary at that position because we have the lock on. And then here, so I think this looks okay. And then here, the legs again, I think they're two kind of separated again. We'll just take this left leg and kind of move it inwards like that. And this time we can actually take the foot and use the W hotkey And you can move the foot slightly outwards like that as well, just so it doesn't look like it's so much, so far in there. And we'll rotate the thigh slightly inwards as well. Let's see what that looks like. So we've kind of fixed that right there. And then here, let's try to do the same thing with that foot again. And I'm going to move it slightly out so it's not so far back. And then take her thigh and move it slightly inwards like that. Okay, so we're just kind of, slightly modifying the run. And you can see here, she'll go like, really weird because now we've done all kinds of wacky modifications. And at this frame right here, what I want to do is, again, click and copy my first motion layer keyframe. And right here, I want to paste it. That's going to bring it back to the original. So I think right here is, looking okay. And let's go ahead and just play that back really fast. Okay, I think that's looking better. Better than it was before anyways. Now, one other thing I want to focus on here is we're going to create a constraint. Because when I look at my character's head, it looks kind of weird, like she's kind of like looking to the side like that. And I want her to be like, right there, for example. I want her to be looking more forward. So you can actually use constraints as well to add animation to your characters. And what we can do here as well is use that same prop, use the same dummy prop that we had before. Let's take it right to the front of the character right here. So she's looking kind of directly forward. And what I can do is have my character look at this prop. So if I select my character, go into my edit tab right here. Let's close this down. Let's go to this look at function with my character selected, pick target, and let's pick that little arc right there. Now I want her to look at it, very strongly with her head. So you can change from, eye weight to head weight right there. But I'm going to make sure that the head weight is at maximum right there. And then we can go ahead and play back. And you can see now she's looking directly forward at that arc, which is more along the lines of, what we're going for right there. We still get a slight, twist in the head, but that's fine. I think we can work with that. So you can move this to, wherever you want in the scene if you wanted, like to move it over here. She'll follow it along. And you can, puppet that in real time if you wanted as well using the prop puppet tool, which we can talk about in a separate tutorial. But that's about it for this one right here. Now we have that motion, that running motion that we've modified. Let's make sure we have our character selected. And let's click and drag in the collect clip track. And right click then. And now in this case we need to add motion plus to 3D Exchange because this constraint, this look at constraint, is not covered in regular motions. So you need to select Add Motion Plus to 3D Exchange. Make sure you select Add Motion Plus to Library first. You need to make sure that we have Bake Constraint Key selected. If you don't have that selected, it's not going to work. So make sure you have that selected. I can just cancel right now and make sure we just right click and Add Motion Plus to 3D Exchange. Now we have our running motion right here, which is fine and dandy. And we're going to work with this for now. You can see also that the character's hair is kind of going through the chest right there, which is really not what we want. So let's go ahead and press stop. And you'll notice that our character is leaning fairly far forward in this case. Like her motion, she's running pretty far, or she's tilted pretty far forward. What I can do is just modify that slightly by going back here. We'll add that motion plus to the library again. And we'll just press OK. We'll call this run test 01. Okay, and that's a motion plus file. And then let's right click on our character there and remove object animation. Now we can delete our prop, and let's go to our desktop, run test 01. We can simply apply it to our character now. Whoops, there we go. And we'll apply the same motion to our character. And now we have that clip again. If I have my character selected here, let's make sure we close that down. And now you can see our character's leaning pretty far forward. Let's press F3, go into the timeline. I need to select our character manually here. We'll select our avatar test right there. And we apply it, I guess, a couple frames too late. So let's just make sure we apply it at the very beginning. Click and drag that clip to the very beginning there. And there's our motion right there. Let's go ahead and try to make sure our character's body isn't so far forward. Because what can happen in this case is if the hair is going forward into the chest, we can modify it slightly by modifying her position. So let's go ahead and select Modify in the, or Animation in the Modify panel rather. And with our character selected again, Edit Motion Layer tool. Now we can select her hip, and we can move her hip slightly backwards like this. At the frame 1, make sure you're at frame 1 when you do this. We can use that, or we can keep it at the same, relatively the same position, and take her midsection there. Use the E hotkey to rotate it, and move her up like that, and use the chest, and move the chest up like that. Now her head's kind of looking too high though, so we can select her head and move that forward like this, and then we get something like a little bit better like this. Now we can work with that. Again, that's just the way you can modify the entire run if you want. You know, make it a little bit more upright. Let's go ahead and work with that for now. We may have a little bit of, you know, breakage through on the chest there, but we'll worry about that later on. So let's go ahead and collect clip again. Right click and drag, or rather left click and drag, right click and select Add Motion Plus to 3D Exchange. And now you can see our character is a bit more upright, and the hair is kind of, you know, not breaking through. It's kind of breaking through the back, but again, that'll be something you have to worry about with physics later on. So this is going to be our running motion right here. You can see from the back, it looks pretty decent. I think we're okay. We're going to be working with this slightly modified version of the run that we previously had, and we'll just work with this for now. So with this one select, we'll press space and stop that. Let's go ahead and select this motion plus 1 and add to perform, and we'll call this one sprint. Alright, so that's about it. Now in the next tutorial what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a perform motion using facial animation as well as body animation, and as you can guess we're going to be exporting that with Motion Plus and importing that body and facial animation into Unreal. So thanks for watching this tutorial, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to check out our forums at forum.reallusion.com. You can also leave questions and comments in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your feedback, and stay tuned for the next tutorial.